Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Stars daily sports podcast. It's Thursday, February 23rd, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. We're talking Big 12 men's basketball today with Kellis Robinett. He covers Kansas State and follows the Big 12, so we break down the league race. We look at bracketology, player of the year, coach of the year, you name it, we talk about it. Every team has 3 games remaining before the Big 12 tournament, with Kansas and Texas tied at the top, 2 games ahead of K-State and Baylor. Looks like it's coming down to the Jayhawks and Longhorns, and they meet in the final game of the regular season. Okay, let's get started. Before the conversation, we'll hear a snippet from Kansas State coach Jerome Tang, who was asked after the Wildcats completed the season sweep of Baylor on Tuesday if this game was less emotional than the first meeting against the school that had employed him for the previous 2 decades.
Coach, you talked about after the game in Waco how emotional that was for you on a personal level, obviously returning to a place that's very special to you, coaching against Scott Drew for that first time. For the second time around, was it a little bit more normal, a little bit more like just another game, or were you still having some of those same emotions pre- and post-game?
Well, it was more like a normal game, but the circumstances going into this game was different than the last, right? Like last game, they had back-to-back losses, right? And so I knew at the end of that game, either we were going to lose and I wasn't going to be happy, or they were going to lose. There was going to be a 3-game losing streak, and I understand the pressure of a 3-game losing streak and what can happen, go into it. And so you never want to see the people you love go through that. So it really wasn't a lot of fun. This one, both teams are, I think, now in the NCAA tournament. I feel like, we have enough wins that we're in the NCAA tournament. Now, we're not satisfied, but I feel like we are. And they have, they were arguably the hottest team in the league, except for the last two games, the second half of the last game, and then this game. So, the circumstances are so different now that I feel like I was able to enjoy this more.
Kellis, it's been a while since you and I chatted. That's what happens when Chiefs make a Super Bowl run and sports world turns upside down in Kansas City. But it's great to talk to you again and to catch up on Big 12 basketball matters. And we're down to the final week and a half of the regular season. Just 3 games left for everybody in the Big 12 race. It looks like it's coming down to 2 teams at the top for first place, but a lot of jostling going on below Kansas and Texas at the top, and Kansas State's in the thick of it. And not to say Kansas State not eliminated yet, neither is Baylor or even technically Iowa State, but it would take a lot of strange circumstances for those 3 to supplant Kansas or Texas. How do you see the Big 12 race right now with 3 games left for everybody?
Yeah, I think it's down to a 2-horse race, and really I think it's the Jayhawks to lose, even though them and Texas have the same record right now. Kansas's schedule is much more forgiving. Their final 3 are at home against West Virginia, home against Texas Tech, and then they get to play Texas in the season finale. That game could have some implications championship-wise at the bitter end of the season, but before that game even takes place, Texas has to go to Baylor and to TCU, 2 teams that love to beat Texas, 2 teams that are really good, 2 teams that are really strong at home. So you never know if Kansas holds firm at home and Texas loses those games on the road. Maybe it won't have Big 12 championship implications. So if you look at, the sports books right now, they've got Kansas as about a 2-1 favorite, 1-2, I should say, instead of 2-1. Texas hanging around about 3-1. Bart Torvik, I believe, who does a great job breaking down percentages on these things, has Kansas at about an 85% chance to at least share the conference championship and 57-58 to win it outright. So from where I'm sitting, it's Bill Self's to lose. The same situation we seem to be in every season this time of year. The only real wild card I see with them is that Texas Tech is surprisingly hot at the moment, beating everyone in their path. Could they play spoilers and help out the Longhorns? That's the key I'm looking at there.
Yeah, and Texas lost to Texas Tech earlier this season in one of the games that had Texas taking care of business in that game. They'd be in first place in the Big 12 with KU chasing them. But both are 11-4. Kansas State and Baylor both 9-6, and Iowa State is 8-7. Let's stay on KU just for a second. They were picked to finish second, I believe, in the league. Was it Baylor picked to finish first, or do I have that wrong? I don't
remember. It might have even been third behind Baylor and Texas.
Okay.
But it was close between those teams. Baylor was first, and then it was either Texas or Kansas, depending on who you asked.
So it seems like every team in the Big 12 this season has had its, 1.5 to 2 to maybe 2.5 week stretch of just, playing their worst basketball. And Kansas certainly had that. They a 3-game losing streak in league play, and a lot of people believe they were, they were destined not to win the Big 12 when that happened. But everybody goes through that, and that's how, just how difficult and unforgiving this league is. Kansas State went through something like that. Was it 4 out of 5 Big 12 games and losing? And it kind of took them out of the race for first. But they have rebounded nicely, and you and I are recording this on Wednesday. So when we say last night, we're talking about Tuesday night. What a terrific second half and terrific victory for the Wildcats over Baylor to sweep the season series.
Yeah, Kansas State really in the second half of both their last 2 home games has reminded us just what they're capable of. They looked finally once again like the team we saw at the start of conference play when they were blitzing Baylor, blitzing Texas, beating Kansas at home, and rose all the way up to number 5 in the national rankings. They've fallen off since then. Depending on how you want to measure it, they lost 6 of 8, 4 of 5. Not a great stretch of basketball, but at the same time, like you mentioned, that was their toughest stretch of the season. A lot of games on the road, had to go to Ames to play Iowa State, to Lawrence to play Kansas. An angry Texas team came in here, and everybody, I think, kind of made the mistake of looking at Texas Tech and Oklahoma and saying, those teams aren't any good. Well, maybe that's the case with Oklahoma, but Texas Tech, at the time, everybody threw up their arms and said, what is Kansas State doing, losing by 8 in Lubbock? Well, maybe they just figured some things out and got healthy at the right time. I actually think Texas Tech still has a chance to make the NCAA tournament right now, which is crazy because they started the league play like 0-7, 0-8, something like that. You make a great point. I believe there's only 1 or 2 teams in the entire conference that haven't lost 3 consecutive games. Kansas did it. It's happened to TCU. Kansas State barely avoided it, but they lost 4 of 5. Iowa State's in the midst of it right now. Baylor started 0-3. It's just a gauntlet, this conference this season. Nobody can just sit back and say, we're never gonna lose consecutive games. You can never really circle anything except maybe Oklahoma at home is an easy win. But even they've pushed people. And Jerome Tang brought this up last night. If they're the worst team in this conference, they beat Alabama by about 9 million points when they came and played in the Big 12 SEC Challenge. So that goes to show how hard this league is. And it really does make me wonder, like, who at the end of the season do you say is Big 12 Coach of the Year? I understand a lot of people who are listening to this probably, if they live in Manhattan, think it's automatically going to be Jerome Tang, and I get that. Kansas State was picked to finish last in the preseason poll. They're having a great season, top 15, definitely deserving of consideration. But at the same time, for all we say about this league, are you really going to sit back and say that the coach who wins it isn't the Coach of the Year? I don't know. If Rodney Terry wins it at Texas or Bill Self wins it at Kansas, I think you got to at least consider those guys because that's a heck of an achievement.
All right, I want to come back and revisit Coach of the Year here in just a second because it's a great point, and there's some good Coach of the Year stats I want to throw at you. But before we do, I want to get back to K-State. And one thing I was hearing, Kellis, is when Kansas State was going through the throes of the slump, that maybe Keontae Johnson was tiring a little bit, which would be totally understandable given his, what's happened with his career and where he's been the last couple of years. That, after 20, 25 games, he'd start to feel it on his body. But against Baylor, he was terrific. And if he was tired, he seems to have regained his strength. Do you think that was ever a legitimate case with him, or did he just go through a little slump?
I do think there was concern there. I'm with you. You take 2 years off from anything, it's hard to come back and just be 100% for every single game. And February is a tough time to stay motivated. I will say, early on in conference play, hey, we got to win the Big 12. We got to win these games. You get into February, you're already comfortably in the March Madness field. Everybody's calling Keontae Johnson the most inspirational story in college basketball. I just wonder if more than anything, he got maybe a little complacent. And I do think that combined with his legs has led to a slump a little bit. Jerome Tang has mentioned this, that in the last week after they lost those road games, he realized he maybe pushed his team a little bit too hard, got angry at him, rather than practicing, had him running, and just had an adverse effect in games. You could tell they were tired, wore out in the second halves. And I mean, you think about it, Texas Tech, they were right there at halftime, lose by 8. Oklahoma, they're tied at halftime, lose by 14. He wanted to switch that narrative, and actually this last week gave his guys time off, didn't run them a lot in practice. Then it's been the opposite. They surged from double digits down against Iowa State to win. They're trailing at Baylor. They win by trailing at halftime against Baylor and win by double digits. So good coaching move by him. And I think if Keontae Johnson was losing his wind, he's got it back. The only other thing I will throw in there is, I think, this is just for me, nobody else has told me this, I think that game they played against Florida was kind of his Super Bowl, going up against his old team. He had a great outing in that game. Kansas State won by 14. He did a long victory lap after they won that thing. His whole family was in town, taking 1,000 pictures. And it was right after that when he hit his slump. I think that going up against his former team, winning that game, I think he put a little bit too much emphasis on that, and it took him a minute to get back to where he needed to be.
I love that point. I can remember one of the highlights from that day was the handshake line, and he stopped and chatted and high fived and fist bumped every Florida player, and it was really kind of an emotional scene, right? It totally was the Keontae Johnson game, and that is a good point. I didn't put that together, that the Kansas State slump, and it kind of happened around that, and totally understandable if that ends up being the case. But it seems like the Wildcats are back on track, and I'll tell you what, we can't say it enough. It is a brutal pace for these teams. You're playing in, Oklahoma is the only team outside of the net top 50 right now. Changes. The net changes with every game, but Oklahoma's at 72, which is still pretty good. I mean, there are teams, at-large teams, that might get in with that sort of net with a really good record. Oklahoma would not with their record in a net, but it is a gauntlet. You play 2 games a week against teams that are either in the top 25 or top 50 RPI. It is hard to maintain and a good solid pace, but that's where we are with the Big 12. Not just this year, but look, this has been going on now for 4 or 5 years. Last 2 national champions, last 3 Final Fours with at least one team in it, or last 4, right? 18, 19 didn't have one in 20, 21, 20, 22, and then Oklahoma made it in 16. So it really has been a matter of the reputation of the league, the performance catching up to the reputation, because even before these last 4 or 5 years, the Big 12 has been a computer rating darling, always 1 or 2, and what we used to call we used to use the RPI, and but they didn't have good postseason success to show for it. Well, now they do, and now it seems to me that the league has put itself in a position where it can only overwhelm or disappoint in March. They're either going to be a national story by getting 1 or 2 teams through the first weekend, or they're just going to swamp the field and get 4 or 5 teams into the second round. Which brings us to our little bracketology corner, Kellis. Where let's start with Kansas State and work around with some other teams.
Okay.
What's the latest you've been seeing Kansas State and some of the bracketology, and what's your sense of it right now?
I think they're looking at a number 3 seed right now. If they could end the year hot and especially go deep in the Big 12 tournament, I think they could move their way up to that 2 line. And then adversely, if they lose, which they could, they've still got to go to Oklahoma State and to West Virginia. Winning on the road in this league is never easy. So if that happens and they flame out in the Big 12 tournament, maybe you're looking more at a 4 seed. I feel pretty comfortable that they'll be, on one of those top 4 lines. They were a 3 seed when the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee selected their, preseason bracket preview. And that was before they went out and beat Iowa State and Baylor. So you'd think they'd only gone up since then. The real question I have for them is, where are they going to start? Is it going to be Des Moines with Kansas for our sake, we'd love that. We could just drive up there and all have a nice party together, watching our local teams.
Hey, throw Missouri up there as well. Let's get
Missouri in there. Have UMKC win the Summit League tournament, and they can go play there too. Be amazing. So that's what everybody's rooting for. If it's not there, Denver would also be fine with Kansas State fans. It's not much longer of a drive. But right now, some bracketology places have them going to Orlando. I'm a little bit further away. So there's a lot to play for. If they want that, nice nearby location to start out, they need to keep winning.
Right. And the question with Kansas to me is not if they're a 1 seed, they're going to be a number 1 seed. I'm pretty sure if they finish first or tie for first, I don't think there's any question that they'll be a 1 seed. The question now is, could Kansas become the overall number 1 seed? And the reason that is somewhat significant is not only do you have the bullseye on your back of being the overall top seed, but there's a regional semifinal in Kansas City at T-Mobile Center, and right now, if Kansas were seated below Houston, Kansas City is the closest destination for Houston in the way bracket, the way it works with the selection committee. They'll assign teams to the closest regional site, and for Houston right now, it's Kansas City. So if Kansas would have to finish ahead of Houston in the overall seeding of the tournament to be assigned the number 1 seed in the Midwest and get to play in KC, I don't know if Kansas really wants that. It's fine if you get it, but they haven't come out of a regional final. I'm trying to think. They've only had disappointment in regionals coming out of KC. I remember the last time was 2017 and got stomped by Oregon, not just the second half, but the whole game and in the regional final. When they just don't come out of Kansas City to get to the Final Four. I think Las Vegas is the West region final, and I don't think anybody from Kansas would mind going to play in Las Vegas in the West. So that's my 2 cents on what might happen to Kansas. Right now, Houston, Kansas, Alabama, Purdue could be on the 1 line, and you're absolutely right about Kansas State. I think that they're in a position to play their way up in seeding with what they have left on the schedule. So it's always fun to play bracketology, and it's even more fun this year when you've got not just Kansas State and Kansas, but also Missouri fans interested in where their teams might get going. So.
And it's interesting, too, to think Kansas State, they don't have to necessarily worry about competing with Houston for the Midwest region. If they're a 2 seed or a 3 seed and get favorable placement, they could end up playing in Kansas City if they advance that far. So that would be another nice little, carrot to stick out there for them. I will say I'm absolutely with you. If I'm a Kansas Jayhawk fan, I want no part of Kansas City. I don't care how convenient it is. I was there when Oregon came to town. Kansas State was eliminated by then, so they told me to go over and help cover it. And I remember looking around before the game. There was not but maybe 3 Oregon fans in the entire building. It was an electric atmosphere, and people on press were saying, there's no way Kansas can lose this game in front of this crowd, and they got boat raced.
Yep.
Never in the game. I mean, just crushed. And, yeah, you're right. It seems like every time they get sent to Kansas City – since 1988, bad things seem to happen to him. So if I'm them, hey, you and me, we've been to Louisville to cover regional. It's amazing. Vegas sounds great. The other one's in New York, right?
New York City, Madison Square Garden.
There's not a bad trip out there. Maybe it's not as convenient as Kansas City, but if I'm Kansas, I'm hoping to go somewhere else personally.
Hey, last time Kansas City had a regional final, Houston wasn't the Sweet 16 in Elite 8. Houston was in it, I believe, lost to Kentucky, and then Auburn turned around and beat Kentucky in the All SEC final to go to the Final Four that year, 2019. Hey, this is Blair. There are several ways to access the Star Sports section. Let me tell you about a couple of them. There is Sports Pass. For $12.99 a month, you get unlimited digital access to all of the Star Sports content, including beat writing, columns, features, pretty much everything we write. The deal renews monthly until you tell us to cancel. For $159.99 a year, you get everything the Star has to offer digitally, including sports and the e-edition. Go to kansascity.com and drop down to the bottom of the page where it says Start a Subscription for more information. Your support has never been more important. As always, thanks for reading and listening. All right. Hey, Kellis, let's get back to Coach of the Year quickly. You brought it up before, and I really kind of see it as a two-candidate race right now between Jerome Tang and Rodney Terry of Texas.
No Bill Self, huh? No Bill Self?
Nah, Bill's won it 6 times. He doesn't – and I was going to throw some stats at you. Bill's won it 6 times. Scott Drew has won the last 3 Big 12 Coach of the Year awards.
Interesting.
So, I'm not – defending national champ with a couple of returning starters. I'm not going there. But – for most of the season, like the first 17, 18 games when Kansas State was rocking that great record, Jerome Tang was the leader for National Coach of the Year, I thought. And I think he's still in the conversation for that honor. But you consider the circumstances for Rodney Terry having to take over the program after a handful of games with Chris Beard losing his job. So listen, it's an award that's kind of odd, right? It always seems to go to the coach whose team had the lowest expectation going into the season. And that's why I think Jerome Tang's going to end up winning it.
I do too. And that always kind of amuses me. To me, Coach of the Year, it seems like it should be the simplest vote of all. If you built the team that won the championship, you are the Coach of the Year. I mean, right? That's the goal. The goal is to win the games. Come on, Herm Edwards. So whoever wins the conference championship should get it. I typically lean that way unless there's, crazy circumstances. I remember one year when Tubby Smith was at Texas Tech, like they were projected to win like 2 Big 12 games, and he ended up having them 9-9. And got him to the NCAA tournament. And I voted for Tubby Smith that year, and I had some KU people tell me I was crazy because KU won the league, and I thought it should be Self. Kind of the same situation this time around, except Jerome Tang's done better. He's going to finish with a winning record. Nobody really expected much from this team. Even me, I was on the record right before conference play started back in December saying that I thought a good goal for this team would be just don't finish last in conference play. And here they are knocking on the door of a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. So hard to argue with Jerome Tang. If you're picked to finish last and you go this high up, you're probably going to win the award. But I will say if Texas wins the conference after all they've been through with an interim coach leading them, it would be hard not to give it to that guy. I said, not only does he win the league, but he's dealing with the lowered expectations angle that we just talked about. So in that situation, I would give it to Terry. I would have to think about it if KU wins the league. I would have to think about it between Self and Tang, but I think Tang would win it because I'm with you. I don't think anybody wants to give it to Self.
Well, let's just say that without having the coach's contracts in front of me, every coach has some clause and stipulation that there's a bonus involved with winning conference Coach of the Year. Self makes $10 million a year. I don't know what the bonus is, but I think he can do okay without it. Not that should be taken into consideration, but heck, maybe look. I know one year back in the 2012 season, Self and then Frank Haith of Missouri. One was National Coach of the Year, the other was Big 12 Coach of the Year. I can't remember which was which. So stuff like that happens as well. All right, give me a reason why Jalen Wilson will not be the Big 12 Player of the Year. I agree. There's no reason.
Yeah, I don't think I have one.
No, he's been fantastic. He's been better. He's been better than I thought he was going to be when he decided to come back from a year ago. I think he has taken his game farther from last season in one season, I should say, than Ochai Agbaji did a couple of years ago when he became Big 12 Player of the Year and first team All-America. I think both of those are in the cards for Jalen Wilson, Big 12 Player of the Year, first team All-America, and I think he absolutely made the right decision to come back this season.
I mean, the only thing I could maybe say is if Keontae Johnson scores 50 points in all 3 of his remaining games. And, that would maybe do it. I do, but I mean, Jalen Wilson, his numbers are just so much better than everybody else's. And he has had some quiet games, but he's had a lot of big games. And he's the reason Kansas was able to, in my opinion, weather the storm there when they had that losing streak, stay above water until they figured out what to do with Grady Dick and DeJuan Harris and everybody else. And now they're playing more complimentary basketball. And I think he's the main reason why. I don't see anybody catching him. But from Kansas State, I do think that you've got 1 or 2 very worthy players who could end up on the first team, and Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson. And honestly, if Kansas State had not gone on their cold streak, I would probably be arguing right now that Johnson needs more consideration for Player of the Year. But they're not going to give it to a team that finishes 3rd or 4th, and that's where Kansas State is. And
Well, I do like the idea of a couple of Kansas State players making first team All Big 12. I think that's in play for the Wildcats, and they're the only team that I would say that about. Grady Dick, of course, and DeJuan Harris for Kansas are terrific players. Kansas, they don't win if DeJuan Harris isn't playing well. If he's not at the top of his game, that's how under the radar valuable he is to KU. But between Keontae Johnson and Marquise Noel, especially if Kansas State takes care of business down the stretch here, I think it's a pretty better than 50-50 proposition that they end up with 2 on the first team. And how far back do we have to go for the last time something like that's happened? Is that a Bill Walker?
I'm pretty sure Dean Wade and Barry Brown were both.
Oh, okay. Team. There you go.
There when they won the league. But since then, Nigel Pack is the only player who's made first team for him since then. So even to have 1 is a big deal in Kansas State. To have 2 would signify that they had a really good season. I will say, you mentioned it here a second ago. I think one thing voters will really struggle with is what do you do with a player like DeJuan Harris, whose numbers don't at all support that he should be all conference in the all conference conversation, but his defense is lights out. Ultimate glue guy. I really don't know. I wouldn't put him on the first team just because of his lack of numbers, but you could make a case for him to be there. So, and I think overall it'll be guard heavy. Like what do you do with Mike Miles? He's one of the best players in the league, but he missed a bunch of time. That'll be interesting here in a week or so how that shakes out.
Yeah. Canty George at Baylor. I guess he would be the leading Baylor candidate, but Baylor's got Flagler and Cryer. They've got a bunch of guys that. If this thing goes 3 deep, a 3-team all Big 12, then all of those guys will make it. And I think that's where you'll see Harris and Grady Dick for Kansas on the 2nd and 3rd teams. And, a bunch of guys. There are so many. Marcus Carr at Texas. I mean, you've got a lot of candidates. And, there'll be some disagreement because it's not an obvious – I don't think it's an obvious 5. Because I think it can go 6, 7, 8 deep, but there'll be some ballers on the 2nd team All Big 12. I can assure you of that. All right, Kellis, great conversation. We will have many more of these in the next few weeks because conference tournament. We got to settle the Big 12 race. We got individual honors as we've talked about. We've got the Big 12 tournament, which will just be off the hook great in Kansas City this year. And then Selection Sunday, and, of course, the NCAA Tournament, March Madness. Kellis, it was great catching up with you, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Yeah, I'm with you. I can't wait for the Big 12 Tournament. That is going to be insane.
That'll do it for today. Thanks to Randy Mason for producing today's podcast and all of our SportsBeat KC shows this week, and to our SportsBeat KC staff of Monty Davis, Jeff Rosen, and Scott Chasen. Tip of the cap to Kellis Robinett for sharing his Big 12 insights. Morning Sports Edition is the best digital sports page in the country. Check it out at liveedition.kansascity.com and see what I'm talking about. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City every day.